What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the E! Network. And before we get started here, a bit of an update. I have largely recovered from my sickness from late last week. I think I had the cold. My voice was shot for the better part of last week. I've been coughing ever since. The cough is not completely gone, unfortunately. It'll likely take another week or two for that to be gone, rid of completely. But it's gotten a lot better. I was not feeling too great when I recorded my last Total Bellas review about a week ago. That was actually when it started. It only got worse in the days that followed. And I never get sick either. So thankfully, I'm largely back on track. All the audio this week, including hashtag AskGSM, WrestleRant Radio, any more Network and Chill videos, and a potential review of Fighting with My Family, which I saw on Friday. Which is why I did not record the video a couple days ago, just because my voice has been terrible over the last week. All that stuff should be back on track, and we should experience no issues, fingers crossed, between now and when I get back to 100%. I would say now I'm back to like 85, 90%. But nonetheless, guys, today we're talking Total Bellas, Season 4, Episode 6, entitled The First Date. The last time we saw Nikki Bella, she was kind of toying with the idea of getting back on the horse, re-entering the dating world, and with a bit of a push from her sister Brie, she gets back into the dating world, back on the dating scene on this episode, which is what this episode is kind of largely revolving around, including the fallout from Brie Bella's incident with Liv Morgan at the end of last week's episode, where she accidentally injured Liv Morgan on an episode of Raw in that 6-woman tag team match. I went on a bit of a rant on the end of that last episode, which I'm not apologizing for, just because you see John Laurinaitis, and I know they're saying these things to make Brie feel better, but they're like, oh, shit happens. Like, this has happened multiple times with Brie before. Not as much as with someone like a Nia Jax, who has like a fucking, record of hurting people over the last 2 or 3 years. Brie's not quite that bad. But this shit just doesn't happen. Like, that's pure recklessness. I know it was an accident. She didn't do it on purpose. Clearly, no one's arguing that she did it on purpose. But it shouldn't have happened, is the bottom line. I sympathize with her, but it should not have happened. Given her experience level, she should have known better to not do what she did. And granted, I'm not in her shoes, or boots rather, so I can't speak for her. And obviously, I cannot shit all over her without being a wrestler myself. I completely understand that. But at the same time, it's like, if you've really been wrestling for the last decade, you would think she would have more of a ring wherewithal to know to not kick her opponent when her opponent is clearly unconscious. I know she got stuck up in the heat of the moment, but anyway, whatever. I know she had been sitting out on the sidelines for 2.5 years in retirement, so whatever. I went on more of a rant about it at the end of last week's review for Total Bella, so check that out if you want, but that's kind of what this episode deals with as well. Brie had called Brian soon after the incident, crying about the Liv Morgan thing. She talked about how overwhelmed she is. We talked about this last episode, before the injury even occurred. She talked about how overwhelmed she was, and this has never happened to me before. It's happened to other people, but never to me. I find that very hard to believe. Maybe this exact same situation has never happened to Brie. I mean, she's fucked up before. I don't know if she's actually injured anyone in the ring. Come close, maybe. I don't know if she's actually injured anyone, so it's good that's happening 10 years in and not when she first started wrestling. So there is something to be said for that, so I give her props, I guess, in that respect. Anyway, so Brie goes home, and Brie talks to Brian about the whole thing, and the fact that she's getting a ton of Twitter hate from it, which you knew was coming. You knew this was going to be featured on the show when this whole shit happened a few months ago. And they talked about all the hate that the Bellas were getting on Twitter for Brie injuring Liv Morgan. Like, what the fuck? Go kill yourself. And like I said last week, that shit is completely uncalled for. Clearly, no one should be giving Brie Bella death threats and going that far to threaten her life. That shit is uncalled for and gives wrestling fans a bad name. I agree with that. But people like criticizing her, saying that you kind of fucked up, you shouldn't have done that. Saying that on social media, to me, that's not Twitter hate. That's just a pure criticism. Again, it's totally different coming from someone who has never stepped between the ropes before, someone such as myself. But, like, there's a clear distinction between someone saying, go kill yourself, and then another person saying, hey, you kind of fucked up there. Maybe you should not have come back. Or, like, maybe you're not as good as this as you thought you were. Or maybe you should not be back in the ring if you feel you're not ready. Like, that type of thing, that's still a little harsh, but when you do what she did, you're kind of open to criticism. You're kind of subject to criticism when you're on Twitter and you invite people to kind of talk about you when you're on TV every single week. Again, that's purely my opinion. At least it differs from situation to situation. But you had to fucking know they were going to talk about this here on the show, the whole cyberbullying thing. It's not cyberbullying. Fuck off with that shit. Maybe the whole go kill yourself thing is. But everyone else criticizing her was well within their limits to say what they said about what Brie Bella did to Liv Morgan on that episode of Raw. Again, purely my opinion, but thankfully they didn't delve too much into it. They merely talked about it for a few seconds and then moved on. Because I know Daniel Bryan, after this happened, went on Twitter and said, oh, where was my hate when I injured Andrade Anonymous or kicked him too hard? Like, he had gone to the defense of his wife, which he should have. I don't expect anything less, of course, but the fact that he jumped in and called it cyberbullying, shame on the fans. Yeah, shame on us. Yeah, fuck the fans. Yeah, fuck the fans. Whatever. I'm glad they didn't get too much into that. So she talked about, being tired of getting bullied and all this other shit. And then Bryan says, don't worry about it. It's merely a small percentage of the fan base. Yeah, maybe the people who go berserk and tell them to kill themselves might be a small percentage of the fan base. But people who have online social media accounts is not a small percentage of the fan base. He sounds like fucking Eric Bischoff when he says shit like that. I don't know if it was Eric Bischoff or some old creative writer. Someone had said back in the day, oh, the internet only makes up 10% of her fan base. Those are the only smarks around. Which is such fucking bullshit. If you have the internet, you're a part of the IWC. Thank God that term has largely been done away with. The IWC term is so stupid because everybody has the fucking internet. If you have a Twitter account and you have an Instagram account and you follow these people, you are a part of the quote-unquote IWC. So, I don't know what the fuck Bryan's talking about with that. If he's referring to the people that are being obnoxious about the whole thing, then yeah, they're a small percentage of the fan base. If he's talking about people criticizing Brie Bella on Twitter, that's not a small percentage of the fan base. That's at least 50. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I'm sure it's well more than 10%, because almost everyone who watches WWE, kids included, have social media, and for better or for worse, talk about these people on their social media, or go so far as to tweet them every single week. So even if it's a kid saying, good job tonight, Brie, that is included in the fan base. So I think that's bullshit if that's what he was referring to here. Moving right along, Brie then talks to Nikki about the whole thing. She talks about still dealing with the backlash of the whole incident. But then they kind of transition into how Brie thinks that Nikki should get back on the horse and start dating again. Brie realizes, I kind of need someone. I saw you with Brian at the airport being all cute. And she basically implies, I need a Daniel Bryan. Not the Daniel Bryan, of course, something she never thought she would say. But basically what she's saying is that she needs someone like Daniel Bryan that will always be there for her and always care for her. John Cena. The cough coming back, I'm sorry. But, someone that'll always be there for her and care for her and, do all the cutesy shit that she wants to do. She enjoys being alone, but all of a sudden she realizes that she needs someone. She is so fucking, I don't even know what the right word is. I feel like using the word bipolar would be an insult to actual bipolar people. Because Nikki Bella goes back and forth more than the fucking weather. She's for 1 second, she says, oh, I'm content being alone. I don't need a man. I'm self-sufficient, blah, 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 which is fine. And then she'll turn on that the very next episode and go, oh, I need somebody. It's time for me to start dating again. I am done sympathizing with this girl. To imply I ever sympathized with her in the first place would be a mistake, would be a lie. But, excuse me, I have to say, that was an actual cough. At the same time, she keeps going back and forth with what she wants to do. She's like, oh, I want to be alone. Oh, I want to be with someone. I miss John Cena. I'm back to being alone. I'm back to being, an individual. Back to being my own woman. And then she's like, oh, I want to start dating again. Whatever. So, moving on from there, Brie talks to Nikki and the family about how she's been reliving the moment of when she injured Liv Morgan over and over in her head since it happened, and Nikki says that she can relate just with her breakup. So, Brie, thinking that she's doing Nikki a favor, she contacts Nikki's PR person about hooking Nikki up with celebrities, which is the absolute dumbest idea I've ever seen. Whatever happened to fucking going out and meeting people in public? What's up with this whole meeting up and hooking up shit? I mean, again, it's nice of Brie to do that, thinking that Nikki is ready to date, but the only person who can make that decision, who can make that, final say, should be Nikki Bella. And obviously Nikki goes along with it. She's nervous at first, and I'll talk about the date in a second, but it's with fucking celebrities. So it feels very forced. It feels very not organic whatsoever. What surprises me is that not only does Nikki not get upset about this, because she kind of felt slighted by the whole mystery date shit a few episodes ago when she got hooked up with that person on that mystery date, that blind date, the family dinner that she didn't really know was a blind date until she found out it was a blind date. This isn't really a blind date because she knows who it is going in. What surprised me about this was not only that Nikki was, on board with that, but also that the mom was completely on board with that. I mean, granted, she knew who she was going on the date with, some guy from The Bachelor named Peter. So the mom was already familiar with who this person was. But just the idea of Brie contacting Nikki's PR person, but setting Nikki up with a celebrity is so stupid. But whatever. I just thought it was a really dumb concept, but the date does work out. I'll talk about that in a moment. Meanwhile, the twins and the rest of the family plan a surprise party for Kathy for her birthday. Kathy wants nothing to do with it. She doesn't want a party. They plan one anyway, so that doesn't happen on this episode. I think it happens either the next episode or the episode after that or some other upcoming episode. Brie works out with JJ to kind of get her spirits up from the whole incident with Liv Morgan and kind of feeling down about herself. They also meet up with Paige. And of course, they got to plug the movie, Fighting with My Family. I just saw it the other day. Very good movie. I'm hoping to have a review up at some point this week, hopefully, maybe even tomorrow. We'll see. But yeah, she meets up with Paige and with JJ about, the whole thing that happened, and they talk about Brie's incident, and Paige feels like she can relate because she lost her career to something similar that happened when Sasha Banks hit her in the back, and she kind of went numb in her back, and she lost, she injured a nerve or something like that. I'm not exactly how she retired. It was something along those lines. But basically what Paige is saying is that, I lost my career to something like that, and people shouldn't be shitting all over Sasha Banks. Shit happens. This type of stuff happens in our business, and people shouldn't be pooping all over you. And again, she is right to an extent. Brie should take accountability for her actions to an extent in that, she wasn't ready to get back in the ring. She's really not that good to begin with, but whatever. So also with Paige, she talks about being overwhelmed with everything and what she needs to do next. Ultimately, she decides to stick with Raw, to ditch the Daniel Bryan, Brie Bella storyline on SmackDown and solely focus on Raw until Evolution comes up. And the Daniel Bryan storyline had really run its course anyway. There was no reason for her to stay on SmackDown, so this part might have been fabricated. I don't know if she actually chose to stick with Raw or what, but I feel like creative had nothing for her on SmackDown anyway. Unless she remained a member of the SmackDown roster, but it was, as far as I know, she was only really brought in to do the feud with Miz and Maurice was leaving TV anyway to take care of the baby. So I don't think Brie Bella would have stayed on SmackDown regardless, but whatever, they want to spin their narrative, and that's fine. So anyway, Brie and Nikki want to get away from everything, and, they just go out and drink some wine and some champagne, blah, blah, blah. So they get away from the world for a day, and they go out and do some drinking. Nikki's nervous about the date with Peter, so she talks about that with Brie. Brie, hoping to break the ice, Nikki knows about this, and she's not exactly on board, but she sees what Brie is trying to do here. So Brie takes Nikki's phone and FaceTimes Peter when Nikki's in the quote-unquote bathroom, even though she's sitting right there. It's so stupid. It's high school level bullshit. But anyway, she's asking Peter, what should she wear? Should she get dressed up? Blah, blah, blah. Should I expect, what hotel are you staying at? Should I expect to pick her up later? She's joking about the whole thing, but Nikki's not happy. She's like, dude, you really just kind of fucked up the date and made it awkward from the get-go because you were trying to create conversation. So thanks for fucking that up for me. She should have never let her do it in the first place, but whatever. So while Nikki's out preparing for the date, the rest of the family, they go to Nikki's beach house. But on the way to the beach house, they go to an amusement park instead. And it's there that Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis, gives Brie Bella some advice about, hey, life will have its ups and its downs. And this is the most generic advice I've ever heard in my entire life, by the way. But nonetheless, John Laurinaitis tells her, life will have its ups and its downs. No matter how shitty the downs are, the ups will always be great, and that's just life. So they go on a roller coaster to show, hey, life has its ups and its downs. It's so corny, but whatever. It works, because Brie Bella feels better as a result. Anyway, so they all meet back up in Nikki's beach house and to help her prepare for the day. Everyone's there when Peter gets there. Nikki doesn't know how it's going to go, but she hopes it's going to go well. So Peter arrives at the house to pick up Nikki for the date. Brian is the first one to open the door with Winston in his hand, and he actually calls Peter hot. He goes, just saying from my point of view, blah, 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 but I think Peter's pretty hot from guy to guy. He's a pretty good-looking dude. That's what Brian says, and I thought that was hilarious. And then the Bellas say, yeah, he was a very sweet aura about him. He looks nice. He comes across very genuine. He's very sweet, it seems like. Just their initial impressions of Peter upon meeting him. And he seems like a pretty cool dude. So they get to know each other in the car, and he's not driving. They're taking like an Uber somewhere, or like a limo or whatever. But they get to know each other better in the car, and they go on a gondola ride, which is where like they take you in this boat, and they kind of ride the boat around, if you know what that is. I didn't really know what that was until I saw it here. I've seen it before. I didn't know what the word for it was. Apparently it's called a gondola ride. So that kind of goes well. And then Nikki talks about enjoying his company, and it's how it's a nonstop conversation. And they go out to dinner later, and they really get along. They have a lot in common, it seems. And they talk about what's next for Peter, where he goes from here, and how he's going back to do something else for something work-related in New York. And she's like, I'll be in New York at that same time. We should have our second date there. And he's like, already scheduling the second date before our first date is even over. And then they chill out afterward during the day at the very tail end of the day. And Peter goes, and he's laughing. And she's like, why are you laughing? And he says, I just really want to kiss you right now. And they start giggling, and that's it. The episode actually ends as Peter is going in for the kiss. So he goes in for the kill. Whether Nikki follows through on the kiss remains to be seen. My prediction is that she doesn't take the kiss. She actually told Peter before he went for it that, hey, listen, to be honest with you, I have not kissed another guy in over 6 years, since before her John Cena relationship started. So he went for it anyway. He clearly did not care. And whether she will, kiss him back or reject him remains to be seen. We'll find out on the next episode of Total Bellas. So with that being said, guys, thank you for checking out my review of Season 4, Episode 6, entitled The First Date. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be back next week with another all-new review of Total Bellas. In the meantime, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Stay tuned for that potential Fighting With My Family review, hopefully sometime this week, maybe as early as tomorrow, either tomorrow or Wednesday. Time will tell. But nonetheless, guys, as I said, enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.